Welcome to the Kirkland Yard at the north end of San Francisco, at San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf, where behind us are hundreds of our actually very new rolling stock that are under the jurisdiction of the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. They are almost all clean air vehicles, and I'm starting by saying that San Francisco has invested, the people of San Francisco have invested an extraordinary amount of financial resource into Muni, into a transportation agency that moves 750,000 people before the days of COVID-19, that is under tremendous fiscal challenges. I am joined by my colleague, Supervisor Dean Preston, by the chair of the San Francisco MTA Commission, Gwyneth Borden, and our director of transportation, Jeff Tumlin, and the head of the Transportation Workers Union, Local 258, Roger Marenko, to announce, after a little bit of back and forth, at the behest of Supervisor Preston, who actually realized that this was absolutely the wrong time to raise Muni fares in San Francisco. As we work our way through the COVID-19 period, our number one priority is to get people back appropriately and in a healthy way back onto our buses. And this is absolutely the wrong time, despite the MTA's fiscal challenges, to raise Muni fares. This was a very difficult but ultimately productive discussion, and today we are here to announce that the San Francisco MTA and the San Francisco Board of Supervisors have turned the page. We are working together. We are going to collaborate in the years ahead. There will be no Muni fare increase in the 2-year budget that is going to come before the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in the months ahead. And with that, I really want to thank and salute the leadership of my colleague, Dean Preston, who was the first person to really bring this to the fore. And I really want to thank the SFMTA, its commission, and its leadership, and the transportation workers for coming to this Solomonic conclusion today. With that, Supervisor Dean Preston.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Peskin, and thanks to all the media for being here. This has been an incredibly challenging time, obviously for everyone in the city, but especially right now for our transit operators, for all the folks who make our transit system run, whether they are staff at MTA, whether they are operators, or whether they're maintaining lines. This is a transit-first city. That is something that is baked into the DNA of this city. We are a transit-first city, and even in these difficult times, we have to stay true to that. And it's a challenge. We know it's going to be a challenge getting folks back onto public transportation at a time when there are legitimate fears about folks being too close, and making sure we do that in a safe and smart way. But one thing we've been very clear on is we will not raise fares on struggling San Franciscans. And the Board of Supervisors overwhelmingly voted against fare increases. Organizers across the city worked to make sure activist community members came together with our office to make sure that we sent a strong statement that we would not tolerate fare increases during this time. The Muni operators, and I want to thank Roger Marenko and the thousands, over 2,000 members of TWU 250A, stood with us from the start, stood with riders in saying we need to find ways to balance this budget, to keep our system strong, to protect our operators. We need to do all that without forcing the riders who are struggling right now to pay more. And I want to thank Roger, thank you for your leadership, and to all your members for standing with us every step of the way, and we will be there on the Board of Supervisors to stand with you as well. I also want to thank Director Tumlin, Commissioner Borden, and others at MTA for having this dialogue with us, and Chair Peskin taking the lead on the Muni Reform Charter Measure enabled us to have a discussion in recent weeks about the future of Muni, about coming together on broader charter reform that is necessary in a future election, not this one, and also fighting together with MTA, with the Board of Supervisors, for every penny that we can get, whether it's federal money, state money, or local money, to make sure that that our transit system weathers this storm and gets stronger and doesn't get taken down by the crises that are before us. So I want to thank everyone for working together on this, and especially all of the advocates and activists who made clear from day one that now is not the time for fare increases, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to reach this agreement here today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name is Roger Marenco. I am the president of the Transport Workers Union Local 250A. I want to say that during a time when millions of people are being laid off, losing their jobs, losing their lives, losing their health care, losing their homes, one of the last things that they need to hear is that the fares are going up. So that's why we were not able to support increasing the fares during a worldwide pandemic. If we are going to be looking for new or different sources of revenue, of income, etc., then we need to start looking at the top. I have stated publicly, and I will state it again, that I am ready, willing, and able to cut my own personal paycheck by 10% for the next 12 months if other city leaders are willing to step up to the plate, as well as I am. And I give that challenge out to all of the city leaders. If you are making the same amount of money that I am, let us cut our salaries by 10% for the next 12 months to ensure that we are not only talking the talk, but walking the walk. So that's a challenge for all city leaders who are making the same amount or more that I am. I give you that challenge for the next 12 months. Let's start leadership by us taking that step forward, not by increasing fares at the bottom, but by cutting from the top. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Gwyneth Borden.
Hello, I'm Gwyneth Borden, and I am the chair of the SFMTA Board of Directors. We are clearly in unprecedented times. When the staff put together the 2-year budget for SFMTA, we could not have foreseen the circumstances happen today, with millions losing their jobs and thousands being devastated, and they may not actually have jobs again in the future. I want to just say I'm so grateful for our amazing team at SFMTA, all of our operators out there working on the front lines with so many other first responders, to be out there to make sure that we are providing safe and reliable transportation for those who need it most. And that was the reason that we even had the fare increase there in the first place, because we wanted to make sure that we had our transportation that's reliable for those who need it most. As you may recall, for many years, Muni suffered from deferred maintenance and had many meltdowns and just struggled as an agency. Back in 2007, the board set up a fare reserve policy that actually put reserves for the agency. So in downtimes like now, which we're going to take advantage of, we would have some money on reserve to help keep the agency whole. And it's because of that strong fiscal policy that we were in a better position this year especially to weather the storm. The other decision that was made at that time in 2009 was our fare indexing policy. So raising the fares wasn't this capricious act, but it was part of a systematic approach by the board to make sure that these operations were funded adequately so that we could continue to provide the transportation that San Franciscans deserve. We realize that now is a terrible time, and we are struggling as an agency as well. We have sought CARES Act funds and will be seeking funds in a variety of different areas. I want to thank the supervisors, Peskin and Preston, for committing to working with us on coming up with strategies so that we don't have to raise fares, particularly since we don't want to, and especially not on our most vulnerable, which is why we actually adopted the Equity Clipper program when we did adopt our fare increase. I'm looking forward to working with Roger, and I thank him for his leadership with the operators. You know, we have talked to the unions, obviously, when it comes to cutting Salaries, that is a citywide union issue, even with our executives who are part of a union. And so those discussions have began. But as you may know, the majority of our workers are not the executives. And so even with cuts in those areas, they're still not going to be substantial enough. So we are going to need other funding sources. And we look forward to working with all our elected family and citizens and finding ways that we can make sure that Muni is always there serving those who need it most. Thank you.
Mr. Director of Transportation, Jeff Tumlin.
Hello, I'm Jeff Tumlin. I'm the Director of Transportation at the SFMTA. Even back before COVID, back in January, in the peak of a boom economy, Muni faced a significant and growing structural deficit, a deficit that we were trying to solve back then. COVID-19 is not only worsening the structural deficit problems of every government agency, it is also hitting all San Franciscans personally in their pocketbooks. We agree, now is not the time to raise fares, but we also know that we need a path forward for funding Muni to deliver the service that all San Franciscans need. We look forward in the coming months to working with the Board of Supervisors, with the Mayor's Office, and with our labor unions to find that solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And Aaron Peskin back here again. I'd like to conclude before we open this up for questions with a few observations of history. First, the passage of Proposition E in 1999 actually started turning Muni and the MTA around. That was furthered in 2007 by a charter amendment that we all came together on, Proposition A, which I authored and the voters endorsed by a supermajority that brought new revenue to the SFMTA. And recently we passed the TNC tax, which has brought, albeit less than projected because there's a lot less Uber and Lyft rides out there, yet again, new revenues. We are going to figure that out in the months and years ahead. This, as I said, is a turning of a page between the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and the SFMTA. I really want to thank Roger Marenko for his statement and his challenge. We are all in it together as the city, and I just want to say as one supervisor, if the House of Labor and Local 250A wants to take a 10% cut at the table, I will match or exceed that and expect my colleagues and every elected official and other units of labor to do the same. This, Mr. Marenko, is the beginning of a very productive conversation. I really thank you and accept that challenge. Finally, I would like to conclude by thanking Mr. Tumlin and the SFMTA. Today, the day after George Floyd was buried, after his funeral, for standing up and doing the right thing. Members of Local 250A, these buses will no longer be used to transport police to protests in San Francisco. I also want to read a very unfortunate tweet that did not come from the police department, but came from the Police Officers Association. And I would like to condemn in the strongest terms this tweet that says, "Hey Muni, lose our number next time you need officers for fare evasion enforcement or removing problem passengers from your buses and trains. Shouldn't be a SFPD officer's job anyway. SFPD chief should stop using us." That is dereliction of duty. I want to salute the SFMTA for that courageous stance. The Board of Supervisors has your back, and this behavior will not stand in the city and county of San Francisco. We are all available for questions. Thank you.
Given the tweet Supervisor Peskin just read out, are you concerned about the safety of your operators?
The SFPD are our partners. We work with them every single day, particularly given the fact that we are experiencing an increase in assaults on our operators. We believe that the officers that we work with at SFPD will continue to partner with us and will understand the ways in which not only our operators, but particularly our passengers are impacted by the sight of police in riot gear exiting a Muni bus.
Can you talk more about that decision that you made to not transport SFPD to protest?
So I learned that we were transporting police on social media. This then resulted in many very powerful internal conversations that we've been having throughout the agency about what is our rightful role in promoting justice and equality in San Francisco while continuing to focus on our core mission. We are the transport providers for every city agency. We transport persons under investigation for the Department of Public Health. We've been partnering with homeless services and supportive housing on transporting homeless individuals out of harm's way. That is our job, serving other city agencies to move people. That said, when serving other departments gets in the way of our core mission, we have to stop and question that. We firmly believe that, or I should say, I firmly believe that Chief Bill Scott is an essential player in helping to transform the San Francisco Police Department into an organization that can provide a sense of safety and security for all San Franciscans, particularly San Franciscans who felt left behind. We absolutely want to support SFPD and the chief in their mission, but at the same time, we need to also respect the specific concerns of our operators and our passengers.
So did operators come to you with some concerns?
We had deeply mixed feelings throughout the organization. I talked to our union leadership. I talked to the leadership in transit operations. I received letters from many of our employees. We had conversations with the executive team, and we were internally split. The officers of the San Francisco Police Department are our colleagues. We all get a paycheck from the same place, and we want to respect them and our role as transport provider for all city agencies. At the same time, this situation is different. This time is different. And we had to respect what was becoming a majority of voices within the organization, but particularly what we were hearing from the outside.
And if you want to hear from the head of the operators, he is here.
Real quickly, is it just specific to this type of demonstration?
That's right. So our current policy is for protests against police brutality. There's a special that's a special condition that we need to take into account. At the same time, we're having internal conversations with our own director of security about how do we as an agency get better at our own security and enforcement operations, as well as support the San Francisco Police Department in building trust. They are our partners, and we want to be there to help them be better partners for all San Franciscans.
A tweet from the union, do you perceive that as a threat?
My relationship is with management at SFPD, not their labor union. So I believe that as department heads, we will continue to manage our resources for the public good.
I have one question with COVID-19. It's going to have a resurge. It is going to happen. Do you have any plans for that?
So we are fortunate here at SFMTA that we have one of the lowest rates of virus transmission of any transportation agency in the country. We have not had any fatalities. We've not had a single case of worker-to-worker transmission anywhere in the agency. And as far as we know, there's been no cases tied to passengers riding Muni. And that's because from the very beginning of this crisis, we took our operator health and safety, that was foremost in our minds, protecting the health and safety of our operators. And secondly, protecting the health and safety of our passengers. We clean every bus before it goes out. That means completely cleaning our vehicles, typically about 3 times a day. All of the touch surfaces get sterilized. We also, because we're running buses, we've got windows that open, bringing in fresh air circulation. That's one of the things that's unique about this virus, is that it dies really quickly outside and with fresh air. That's also one of the reasons why we've gone to all bus operations, both to protect our operators as well as our passengers, and make our service more resilient in the face of a lot of unpredictability that is facing us. So I'm proud that the SFMTA has been a national leader in addressing COVID directly and protecting the health of our entire employee population as well as the public.
Do you have any plans to create any sort of barriers between drivers and passengers? You know, I know on the trains there is that physical plastic barrier, but on the buses there's not. I know down in San Jose they've been retrofitting all their buses with different plexiglass type shields.
So SFMTA is fortunate in that we're one of the only systems in the country that actually does have a barrier on all of our buses. It's a partial barrier, and we made those barriers mandatory. We're now looking at ways of potentially expanding those barriers in a way that doesn't negatively impact the ability of the operator to see. So a problem that many agencies are having with the complete barrier is glare. So that's something that we're talking with operators all over the United States about how to best balance operator safety from COVID while also ensuring safe driving conditions as well.
What have you been told by SFPD command staff that if you call for help, that officers will respond? Have you received some kind of assurance that officers will be there if you need their help?
From all of the executive staff at SFPD, I've heard nothing but agreement that we are partnering together in order to advance public safety. Anyone else?
There's it says in the interview there's going to be a new revenue measure from the MTA. Do you have any idea what form that might take?
That could take many forms. I would actually probably defer to the supervisors on that question. That will likely be the product of many, many months of study, figuring out what is the right approach for gaining the revenue that Muni needs in order to deliver the service that San Franciscans need.
Since the restrictions have been relaxed, are you seeing an increase now in ridership?
Yes, so ridership is ticking up steadily, and it's been remarkable how we've had to respond. So we are delivering more frequent, more reliable, and faster service on our core lines than I believe we ever have in the agency's history. Service on the 14 mission, which carries a very high number of essential workers, is faster and more frequent than it's ever been. And we're really proud of how we have taken all of our available resources and directed those resources at the corridors that most need it, focusing on where our essential workers live and work, focusing on neighborhoods where people have the fewest mobility choices and the least access to services and to employment, and focusing on essential destinations like hospitals. And as a result of that, our ridership has been strong. We're struggling in some cases to be able to direct enough service to meet the social distancing goals, but starting this Saturday, we'll be rolling out new service to direct that service at places where there has been some crowding, as well as restoring service to critical corridors like the 30 Stockton, serving Chinatown and the Marina and downtown, improve service on the 5 Fulton, extending it all the way out to Ocean Beach, improve service in the Sunset District, and moderate service improvements throughout the city based upon the data that we've been seeing about our changing ridership patterns.
Can I add to that? Just want to add a little bit to this. I mean, we know, and it's something Director Tumlin and I have talked about, we know that there is going to be also a surge in vehicle traffic, and that's why it's so important, some of the steps that MTA is taking right now, including possible Muni-only lanes, other ways to make sure that public transit in this period of rebounding is prioritized on our street, and we don't just experience what so many other cities have experienced that are further down this path than us, which is an extensive gridlock that ties up not only private vehicles but also public transportation. I also want to just comment on some of the comments earlier around the lack of transmission, fortunately, in our transit system of COVID-19, and again just recognize the really the early work of the union and operators around the issue of safety. And just as so often it's nurses who are advocating for patient safety, in the case of public transportation, it's been the operators who are advocating not just for operator safety, but also very strongly for passenger safety. So a lot of the changes, including minimizing the contact with operators, which is something that that Roger and the union were pushing very early to make sure that we effectively eliminated front entry into buses, so people were boarding on the back, limits on the number of people that could be on Muni so that we could have proper social distancing, and advocating for those reforms with MTA leadership. All those changes, wasn't always an easy road, but there was a lot of back and forth on that. But those are what contributed to what Director Tumlin is talking about in terms of the limits on or the limited, if any, transmission on our public transportation system. So I just want to recognize and make sure that doesn't get lost when we're celebrating cautiously, some of the safety improvements that we've seen on our buses. And I want us to, when we head into a time when there's going to be enormous pressure on the city to be slashing away at every department and at every employee, to also recognize the essential role of public transportation in serving the low-income folks of this city, in serving people of color. It's part of the reason we fought so hard against fare increases, but it's also why in this time, even with the challenges, we need to be doubling down on investing in our public transportation system, and that means investing in our operators and the folks that make this system work. Thanks.
The MTA is now down to 4 board directors. What is the Board of Supervisors going to do to help this board build back up?
Well, we're looking forward to getting some nominees that we can approve, and obviously this is a time where we need leadership from the MTA board. They play a crucial role, and there is no shortage in San Francisco of visionary transit advocates, folks who could occupy that board. Unfortunately, and this is beyond the current discussion and announcement, but unfortunately we have a board that is exclusively appointed by the mayor. I'm a big believer in split appointments. I think they work better when you have some of the commissioners appointed by the Board of Supervisors, some appointed by the mayor. But it is what it is right now, and so it's incumbent on the mayor to appoint some transit advocates to that role, and then those will come before the Board of Supervisors for approval. I don't know if anyone...
I would just say that, obviously I can't even go to the bathroom in a meeting, so I'd like the board to approve some nominees of ours. I do want to say that the board does have incredible discretion and have been exercising it through their process of the Rules Committee. As you know, the mayor does not have a similar discretion on the other side for appointees of the Board of Supervisors. So I hope that we can find a way that the two parties can work together so that we can have a bigger board, so I can at least use the restroom during a meeting.
I will only add to that, Ms. Swan, that if there is one silver lining of COVID-19, it is the fact that we're doing all of these meetings on our computers, and the bathroom is much easier to access. Having said that, and I say this in all seriousness, almost a third of the city and county of San Francisco is Asian, predominantly Chinese. And one of the imperatives for the city and county of San Francisco, its mayor, and the approving authority, the Board of Supervisors, is to have representation from that community on the SFMTA Commission, particularly given that the ridership of the Asian community is disproportionately larger than their demographic in the society. So while about a third of the city is Asian, about 50% of the ridership of Muni is Asian. And so we are looking forward to the nomination of a qualified Asian American transportation expert to this commission. The mayor has actually brought before many of us, myself included, such a person, and I look forward to voting for her in the weeks ahead. Thank you, Ms. Swan. If there are no other questions, stay healthy, everybody, and have a good rest of the week.